Marcus Williams looked at his old car one more time before walking away. The engine had made strange noises for the last 50 miles, and now it would not start at all. Black smoke came from under the hood, and he knew it was done for good. He was only 2 blocks away from the most important meeting of his life, but his car had picked the worst possible time to break down. He checked his phone. It was 1:30 in the afternoon and his interview was at 2 Mar. Marcus had plenty of time to walk, but he was already nervous and this was not helping. He looked down at his clothes one more time. His white shirt was clean but old. His black pants had been pressed that morning, but they were starting to wrinkle. His shoes were polished, but anyone could see they had been worn for years. Marcus had driven 3 hours from his small town to get here. He had saved money for 2 months just to buy gas and pay for a hotel room if he got the job. This interview at La Belle Cuisine was his chance to finally work in a real restaurant. Not just any restaurant, but one of the best French restaurants in the whole state. The restaurant looked like a palace to Marcus. Big glass windows showed elegant tables with white cloths and fresh flowers. Well-dressed people sat inside, eating food that probably cost more than Marcus made in a day. The building was made of red brick with gold letters spelling out the restaurant name. Everything about it said expensive and fancy. Marcus found a bench across the street from the restaurant. He sat down and tried to calm his nerves. He pulled out a folder with copies of his resume and photos of food he had cooked. The photos showed beautiful dishes he had made in his tiny apartment kitchen. He had spent hours making each dish look perfect, using ingredients he could barely afford to buy. He had been cooking since he was 8 years old. His grandmother had taught him in her small kitchen, showing him how to make biscuits and gravy, fried chicken, and cornbread. But Marcus wanted to learn more than just Southern cooking. He watched cooking shows on TV every day. He borrowed cookbooks from the library and studied them like textbooks. He taught himself how to make French sauces and Italian pasta dishes. Working at small diners and cafes in his hometown, Marcus had learned the basics of professional cooking. He could work fast, keep a kitchen clean, and cook for many people at once. But he had bigger dreams. He wanted to create beautiful food, the kind he saw in magazines and on cooking shows. He wanted to work with ingredients he had only read about. As Marcus sat on the bench, a woman in an expensive black dress walked toward the restaurant. Her high heels clicked on the sidewalk, and her purse looked like it cost more than Marcus's rent. She was talking on her phone about some business meeting, her voice loud and confident. When she got close to Marcus, she suddenly stopped talking. She looked at him sitting on the bench with his folder in his hands. Her expression changed from busy and important to something else. It was a look Marcus had seen before, but it still hurt every time. The woman reached into her expensive purse and pulled out her wallet. She took out a $5 bill and walked over to Marcus. "Here you go, honey," she said in a voice that was trying to be kind, but came out sounding like she was talking to a child. "Get yourself something to eat." She dropped the money on the bench next to Marcus and gave him a smile that made him feel small. Before he could say anything, before he could explain that he was not asking for money, she was already walking into the restaurant. Her high heels clicked away, and she was back on her phone talking about her important business again. Marcus stared at the $5 bill. He felt his face get hot with embarrassment and anger. He wanted to run after the woman and tell her she had made a mistake. He wanted to show her his resume and his photos and explain that he was here for a job interview, not for charity. But he also knew it would not make any difference. She had already made up her mind about who he was just by looking at him. He looked down at his clothes again. Maybe his shirt was more wrinkled than he thought. Maybe his shoes looked too old and worn. Maybe something about the way he was sitting made him look like he needed money. But deep down, Marcus knew it was not really about his clothes. He had seen this look before and he knew what it meant. More people walked by on their way to lunch or shopping. Some of them looked at Marcus and then looked away quickly. Others crossed the street to avoid walking too close to him. A mother pulled her small child closer when they passed the bench. Marcus felt like he was invisible and too visible at the same time. He picked up the $5 bill, not sure what to do with it. Part of him wanted to throw it away, but $5. was $5. He folded it carefully and put it in his pocket. Maybe he would give it back to the woman if he saw her again. Maybe he would keep it as a reminder of this day. Marcus checked his phone again. It was 1:45. In 15 minutes, he would walk into that fancy restaurant and try to convince Chef Bernard that he belonged there. He would try to show that he was more than what people saw when they looked at him. He would try to prove that his cooking was worth noticing, even if he was not. But sitting on that bench, with people avoiding him and a stranger's pity money in his pocket, Marcus felt his confidence slipping away. The restaurant across the street seemed even fancier now, even more impossible. The gold letters on the building seemed to be laughing at him. Who was he kidding? Did he really think he could work in a place like that? Marcus had faced rejection before. He had been turned down for jobs, ignored by people who thought they were better than him, and treated like he did not matter. But this interview was different. This was his dream, and if it did not work out, he was not sure what he would do next. He stood up from the bench and straightened his shirt. He looked at the restaurant one more time, took a deep breath, and started walking toward his future. Whatever happened in the next hour would change his life forever. He just hoped it would change it for the better. The $5 bill stayed in his pocket, a reminder that sometimes people see what they expect to see, not what is really there. Marcus was about to find out if Chef Bernard would be different from everyone else, or if his dreams were just as broken as his old car. Marcus walked slowly toward the restaurant, his heart beating fast. The $5 bill in his pocket felt heavy, like it weighed 100 pounds. He tried to forget about what had just happened, but the woman's pitying smile was stuck in his head. He needed to focus on his interview, not on people who made wrong guesses about him. As he got closer to La Belle Cuisine, Marcus noticed more people looking at him strangely. A businessman in a gray suit saw him coming and quickly stepped to the other side of the sidewalk. Two teenage girls whispered to each other and pointed in his direction. An elderly man shook his head and muttered something under his breath. Marcus felt like everyone was watching him, judging him before they even knew who he was. He wondered if this was how it would always be. Would people always see his skin color first and make up their minds about him? Would his dreams of becoming a great chef always be harder because of the way he looked? He reached the front of the restaurant and stopped. Through the big windows he could see people eating lunch. They all looked comfortable and wealthy. The men wore expensive suits and the women had jewelry that sparkled in the light. Everyone seemed to belong there except him. Marcus looked at his reflection in the window. His shirt was still clean, but it looked cheap next to the fancy clothes of the people inside. His face looked tired from the long drive and stressed from his car breaking down. For a moment, he thought about turning around and going home. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe he was not ready for this kind of place. But then he remembered his grandmother's words. She had always told him, "Baby, you got a gift with food. Do not let anyone tell you that you are not good enough." She had believed in him even when no one else did. She had saved her own money to buy him his first set of good kitchen knives for his birthday. Those knives were still the most valuable things he owned. Marcus took a deep breath and checked his phone. It was 1:55. He was 5 minutes early, which was perfect. He had always been taught to arrive early for important meetings. He walked toward the front door, ready to go inside and meet Chef Bernard. But before he could reach the door, a large man in a security guard uniform stepped in front of him. The guard was tall and wide, with muscles that showed through his tight shirt. His name tag said Officer Johnson, and he had the serious look of someone who dealt with trouble every day. "Hold on there," Officer Johnson said, holding up his hand like a stop sign. "Where do you think you are going?" Marcus stopped walking and looked up at the guard. "I have an interview here at 2 o'clock, he said politely. "I am Marcus Williams. I am supposed to meet with Chef Bernard." Officer Johnson looked Marcus up and down from his old shoes to his wrinkled shirt. His expression did not change. "Yeah, right," he said with a laugh that was not friendly. "Look, buddy, I have had 3 people complain about you in the last 20 minutes. They said you were out here bothering customers and asking for money." Marcus felt his stomach drop. I was not asking anyone for money, he said, trying to keep his voice calm. I was just sitting on the bench waiting for my interview. Someone gave me money, but I did not ask for it. Sure you did not, the guard said, not believing him. Listen, I do not want any trouble here. This is a nice place with nice customers. They do not want to be bothered by people like you. So why do not you just move along and find somewhere else to hang out? Marcus felt anger rising in his chest, but he knew getting mad would only make things worse. He reached into his pocket for his phone. I can show you the email, he said. Chef Bernard sent me a confirmation for the interview. I have been planning this for weeks. But Officer Johnson stepped back when Marcus reached into his pocket, like he thought Marcus might pull out something dangerous. Keep your hands where I can see them, the guard said in a harsh voice. I do not want to see anything from your pockets. I just want you to leave. Marcus slowly pulled his hands out and raised them a little. He felt humiliated and angry and scared all at the same time. People walking by were stopping to watch what was happening. Some of them had their phones out, probably taking pictures or videos. Marcus felt like his whole life was falling apart right in front of this fancy restaurant. Please, Marcus said, his voice getting quieter. Just call Chef Bernard. Ask him about Marcus Williams. He is expecting me. I sent him my resume 3 weeks ago with photos of my cooking. He said he was impressed and wanted to meet me. Officer Johnson shook his head. I am not calling anyone. I am telling you to leave before I have to make you leave. Do not make this harder than it needs to be. Just then, the front door of the restaurant opened. A young woman in a server's uniform came outside. She had blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail and kind blue eyes. Her name tag said Sarah, and she was carrying a small trash bag to the dumpster. Sarah heard the conversation and stopped walking. She looked at Marcus and then at Officer Johnson. What is going on out here? She asked. Just dealing with someone who does not belong here, Officer Johnson said. He claims he has some kind of interview, but we both know that is not true. Sarah looked at Marcus more carefully. What did you say your name was? She asked. Marcus Williams, he answered. Hope growing in his voice. I'm supposed to meet Chef Bernard at 2 o'clock for a job interview. Sarah's eyes got wide. Oh my God, she said. You are the cook from the small town. Chef Bernard has been talking about you all week. He was so excited about your application. He said the photos of your food were some of the best he had ever seen. Officer Johnson looked confused and a little embarrassed. Are you sure? He asked Sarah. I am positive, Sarah said firmly. Chef Bernard showed me the photos himself. He said this guy had real talent and that he could not wait to meet him. She turned to Marcus with a big smile. Chef Bernard is going to be so happy to see you. He has been checking the clock all afternoon. Marcus felt relief wash over him like warm water. Finally, someone believed him. Finally, someone knew he was telling the truth. Sarah looked at Officer Johnson with disappointment. This man is here for a legitimate job interview with our head chef. Maybe next time you should check before you assume someone does not belong here. The guard looked down at his feet, clearly embarrassed. I was just doing my job, he mumbled. People complained about him asking for money. I never asked anyone for money, Marcus said again, but this time his voice was stronger. Someone gave me money because they made the same mistake you did. They saw me and decided who I was without knowing anything about me. Sarah nodded, understanding. That happens more than it should, she said sadly. But you are here now and Chef Bernard is waiting. Come on, let me take you inside. As Sarah led Marcus toward the door, he felt a mix of emotions. He was relieved that the misunderstanding was cleared up, but he was also hurt that it had happened at all. He wondered how many other talented people had been turned away from opportunities because someone made the wrong assumption about them. The restaurant door opened, and Marcus stepped inside his future. Walking into La Belle Cuisine felt like entering a different world. Marcus had never been inside such a fancy restaurant before. The floors were made of shiny marble that reflected the light from beautiful crystal chandeliers hanging from the ceiling. Soft classical music played in the background, and the air smelled like expensive perfume mixed with amazing food. Sarah led Marcus through the dining room, past tables where wealthy people ate lunch and talked quietly. Their clothes looked like They cost more than Marcus made in a month. The silverware sparkled, and every plate looked like a work of art. Marcus tried not to stare, but everything was so different from the small diners where he had worked. "Do not let all this fancy stuff scare you," Sarah whispered as they walked. "Chef Bernard is not like the snobby customers. He only cares about one thing. Can you cook good food? And from what he told me about your application, you definitely can." They walked through a set of double doors into the kitchen, and Marcus stopped breathing for a moment. The kitchen was like something from a cooking show on TV. Everything was made of shining stainless steel. There were more knives than Marcus had ever seen in one place, all perfectly organized and sharp enough to cut paper. Huge stoves with flames that shot up high. Refrigerators bigger than his bedroom back home. Young cooks in white uniforms moved around the kitchen like dancers, each person knowing exactly what to do. They chopped vegetables faster than Marcus thought possible. They stirred sauces that smelled like heaven. They plated food so beautiful it looked like it belonged in a museum, not on a dinner table. "Chef Bernard," Sarah called out. "Your 2 o'clock interview is here." A short man with gray hair and bright eyes looked up from a pot where he was stirring, something that made Marcus's mouth water just from the smell. This was Chef Bernard Rousseau, the famous cook who had won awards and been on cooking shows. Marcus had watched him on TV and read about him in cooking magazines, but he never imagined he would actually meet him. Chef Bernard wiped his hands on a clean white towel and walked over with a big smile. "Ah, Marcus," he said with a slight French accent that made everything sound elegant. "I have been looking forward to meeting you all day. Your application was truly impressive." Marcus felt some of his nervousness fade away. Chef Bernard's handshake was firm and warm, and his smile seemed genuine. "Thank you for giving me this chance," Marcus said. "I know there were probably many other people who applied for this job." "Yes, there were many applications," Chef Bernard said, "but yours was special. Those photographs of your food, where did you learn to make dishes look so beautiful? The plating was perfect, and the combinations of flavors sounded amazing." Marcus felt proud but also a little embarrassed. "I taught myself mostly," he said. "I watch cooking shows every day and check out cookbooks from the library. I practice new techniques at home every night after I finish work at the diner." "Chef," Bernard's eyes lit up with interest. "Self-taught? That is even more impressive. Show me what you have learned." He led Marcus to a prep station that had more equipment than Marcus had ever used before. "I want you to cook something for me. Anything you want. Use whatever ingredients you find in my kitchen." Marcus looked around the kitchen with wide eyes. There were vegetables he had only seen in pictures, herbs that smelled like they had been picked that morning, cuts of meat that probably cost more than he made in a week, spices from countries he had never visited. It was like being a kid in the world's best toy store. "What should I make?" Marcus asked, feeling overwhelmed by all the choices. "Make whatever speaks to your heart," Chef Bernard said. "Cook the food that makes you happy. I want to see who you are as a cook, not who you think I want you to be." Marcus thought for a moment. He could try to make something fancy and French to impress Chef Bernard, but that would not be honest. Instead, he decided to make something that combined where he came from with where he wanted to go. He would make his grandmother's fried chicken, but use French techniques to make it special. He selected a beautiful chicken breast and began working. His hands moved with confidence as he seasoned the meat with herbs he had never used before but had read about in cookbooks. He created a coating that was crispy like his grandmother's recipe but light and delicate like French cooking. For the yam sauce, he mixed southern flavors with classical French techniques he had studied for years. As Marcus cooked, other people in the kitchen stopped their work to watch. They had never seen someone combine these two completely different styles of cooking. The sous chef, a serious woman named Marie, came over to see what he was doing. Even the dishwashers stopped working to watch. Marcus forgot about everything that had happened outside. He forgot about the woman who gave him money and the security guard who did not believe him. All that mattered now was the food. This was what he lived for, taking simple ingredients and turning them into something magical. The smell that came from Marcus's cooking filled the whole kitchen. It was familiar and comforting like home, but also elegant and sophisticated like the restaurant. Everyone kept taking deep breaths, trying to figure out what made it smell so good. When Marcus finished cooking, he plated the dish with the same care he had shown in his application photos. He made sure every detail was perfect. The chicken was golden brown and crispy. The sauce was smooth and glossy. He added a small garnish of fresh herbs that made the whole plate look like art. Chef Bernard had been watching silently the whole time, occasionally nodding or raising his eyebrows with interest. When Marcus handed him the finished plate, the entire kitchen became quiet. Everyone wanted to see what would happen next. Chef Bernard cut a small piece of the chicken and put it in his mouth. He chewed slowly, thinking about all the different flavors. His expression was serious and concentrated. Then he took another bite, and another. His eyes got wide with surprise and genuine pleasure. "This is remarkable," Chef Bernard said, his voice full of amazement. "You have taken two completely different cooking traditions and made them work together perfectly. This is not just cooking, this is art." He called Marie over to taste the dish. She took a bite and immediately looked shocked. "How did you make the coating so light but still crispy? And this sauce, I have never tasted anything like it. It is Southern comfort food and French technique dancing together." Soon other cooks were lining up to taste Marcus's creation. Each person who tried it had the same reaction: surprise, then amazement, then excitement. They asked Marcus questions about his techniques and where he had learned to cook like this. Marcus felt a happiness he had never experienced before. These were professional cooks who worked in one of the best restaurants in the state, and they were impressed with his food. They were treating him like an equal, like someone who belonged in their kitchen. Chef Bernard pulled Marcus aside. "I have been cooking for 30 years, he said quietly. "I have worked with some of the most talented chefs in the world. What you just did, creating something completely new while respecting both traditions, that is the mark of a true artist." Marcus felt tears forming in his eyes. No one had ever called his cooking art before. No one had ever made him feel like his dreams were possible. "I want to offer you a job," Chef Bernard continued, "but not the prep cook position you applied for. That would be wasting your talent. I want you to start as a line cook, with the promise that you will move up quickly if you continue to show this level of creativity and skill." The offer was better than Marcus had ever dreamed possible. It was a chance to learn from the best, to grow as a cook, and to finally make a living doing what he loved most. As Marcus shook Chef Bernard's hand to accept the job, he realized that sometimes the worst moments can lead to the best opportunities. The humiliation outside had been painful, but it had brought him here to this moment, to this chance to change his life forever. News about Marcus's amazing dish spread through the restaurant faster than fire. Within minutes, servers were telling customers about the incredible smell coming from the kitchen. The manager, a tall woman named Patricia, came back to see what all the excitement was about. Even some of the regular customers who ate at La Belle Cuisine every week asked if they could try whatever was making that wonderful smell. Marcus stood in the kitchen, still not believing what had just happened. Chef Bernard had offered him a better job than he had even applied for. The other cooks were treating him like he was already part of their team. Marie, the sous chef who had worked in fancy restaurants for 15 years, was asking him detailed questions about his cooking techniques. "I have never seen anyone make a coating like that," Marie said, genuinely curious. "It looked like regular Southern fried chicken, but when you bite into it, there are all these layers of flavor. How did you learn to do that?" Marcus felt comfortable talking about cooking. It was the one thing he had always been confident about, even when everything else in his life felt uncertain. "I read about French techniques for making light batters in a cookbook," he explained. "Then I thought about how my grandmother made her fried chicken. I just tried to combine the two methods until I found something that worked." "That is not just combining," said Pierre, one of the line cooks. "That is creating something completely new. Most people who try to mix different cooking styles just make a mess. But you made something that tastes like it was always supposed to exist." Chef Bernard was talking quietly with Patricia, the manager. Marcus could see them looking in his direction and nodding. He hoped they were saying good things. After a few minutes, Chef Bernard came back over with a big smile on his face. "Marcus," Chef Bernard said, "Patricia wants to add your dish to tomorrow's special menu. We have never done that with a job interview before, but we have never had a candidate create something this special either." Marcus felt his heart skip a beat. His food was going to be served to paying customers in one of the best restaurants in the state. People who could afford to eat anywhere would be eating something he created. It felt like a dream that was too good to be true. "Are you sure?" Marcus asked. "I just made it up on the spot. I do not even have a real recipe written down." "The best dishes often come from the heart, not from written recipes," Chef Bernard said. "But we will need you to write it down so our other cooks can learn to make it, and you will need to teach them your techniques." Marie laughed. "I have been cooking professionally for 15 years, and this young man just taught me something new. I am excited to learn from him." The next few hours passed like a blur. Chef Bernard gave Marcus a tour of the entire restaurant, explaining how everything worked. He showed him the walk-in refrigerators that were bigger than Marcus's entire apartment. He explained the ordering system and how the kitchen stayed organized during busy dinner service. "We serve about 200 people every night," Chef Bernard explained. "Each dish has to be perfect every time. There is no room for mistakes when people are paying these prices for their food." Marcus nodded, understanding the pressure. He had worked in busy kitchens before, but never with this level of expectation. Everything here had to be exactly right, every single time. Chef Bernard introduced Marcus to the rest of the staff. There was Jean, the pastry chef who made desserts that looked like small sculptures. There was Carlos, the salad chef who could make vegetables look like flowers. There was David, the meat cook who could tell exactly when a steak was done just by touching it. Each person Marcus met was friendly and welcoming. They asked him about his background and seemed genuinely interested in his story. No one treated him like an outsider or like he did not belong. For the first time in his life, Marcus felt like he was part of a real team of professional cooks. "When can you start?" Chef Bernard asked as they finished the tour. Marcus thought about his current job at the diner back home. He would need to give his boss at least 2 weeks' notice. He would also need to find an apartment in the city and figure out how to move his few belongings. "I need to go back home and quit my current job properly," Marcus said. "Could I start in 2 weeks?" "Perfect," Chef Bernard said. "That will give us time to prepare for your arrival. I want to personally train you during your first month here. You have natural talent, but there are techniques and standards you will need to learn to succeed in fine dining." As they talked about salary and benefits, Marcus realized his life was about to change completely. The money Chef Bernard was offering was more than Marcus had ever made. It was enough for him to rent a nice apartment, maybe even save money for the first time in his adult life. "There is something I need to tell you," Chef Bernard said as they sat in his small office. "When I first got your application, I will admit I had some doubts. Not about your cooking skills, your photos were incredible, but I wondered if someone from your background would fit into this environment." Marcus appreciated the honesty, even though it hurt a little to hear. "What changed your mind?" he asked. "Your food changed my mind," Chef Bernard said simply. "Talent speaks louder than anything else, and watching you cook today, I could see that you have the passion and dedication we need here. You also have something many trained chefs lack. You have your own voice, your own style." Chef Bernard stood up and shook Marcus's hand again. "I want you to know that you earned this job completely on your own merit. No one gave you anything because they felt sorry for you. You got this job because you are an exceptional cook who will make our restaurant better." As Marcus prepared to leave, Sarah came to find him. "How did it go?" she asked with excitement. "I got the job," Marcus said, still hardly believing it himself. Sarah clapped her hands together. "I knew it. Chef Bernard was so excited about your application. He has been looking forward to this interview for weeks." Marcus thought about the security guard who had tried to stop him from entering the restaurant. He wondered if Officer Johnson realized how wrong he had been. He thought about the woman who had given him $5 assuming he was homeless and hungry. "Can I ask you something?" Marcus said to Sarah. "Do things like what happened outside occur often here?" Sarah looked sad. "More often than they should," she admitted. "Some people make judgments too quickly. But the good news is that the people who matter, like Chef Bernard and the kitchen staff, they only care about what you can do, not what you look like or where you come from." As Marcus walked out of the restaurant, he felt different than when he had walked in. He was no longer the nervous young man hoping for a chance. He was now a professional cook who had earned his place in one of the best kitchens in the state. The $5 bill was still in his pocket, but now it meant something different. It was no longer a symbol of pity or misunderstanding. Now it was a reminder of how far he had come in just one afternoon, and how much further he could go with hard work and determination. Marcus looked back at the restaurant one more time before walking away. In 2 weeks, this would be his workplace. These would be his colleagues. This would be his new life. The boy who had learned to cook in his grandmother's tiny kitchen was about to become a chef in one of the finest restaurants around. As he walked down the street looking for a phone to call for a ride, Marcus smiled. Sometimes the worst day of your life can turn into the best day of your life all in the same afternoon. 3 months later, Marcus stood in the same kitchen where he had cooked his first dish for Chef Bernard. But everything was different now. He wore a crisp white chef's coat with his name embroidered on it in blue letters. His knife skills had improved so much that he could chop vegetables as fast as cooks who had been working for years. Most importantly, he felt like he truly belonged here. The dish Marcus had created on his interview day had become one of the most popular items on the menu. Food critics from newspapers in 3 different cities had written about it. One food writer called it a perfect marriage of Southern soul and French sophistication. Another said it was the kind of dish that reminds you why you fell in love with food in the first place. Marcus had learned so much in just 3 months. Chef. Bernard had taught him advanced techniques for making sauces that he had only read about in books. Marie had shown him how to manage his time during busy dinner service when they were cooking for hundreds of people. The other cooks had welcomed him like family and shared secrets they had learned over years of professional cooking. But the most important thing Marcus had learned was confidence. He no longer felt like he was pretending to be a chef. He was a chef. His food made people happy. His techniques had earned the respect of his colleagues. His creativity had brought new customers to the restaurant. One evening, as Marcus was preparing vegetables for the dinner service, he heard a commotion near the front entrance of the restaurant. Through the kitchen doors, he could see Officer Johnson, the same security guard from his interview day, talking to a young woman outside. The woman looked nervous and kept checking her phone just like Marcus had done 3 months earlier. Marcus recognized the signs immediately. The woman was probably here for a job interview or meeting, but Officer Johnson was treating her like she did not belong. Marcus could see the uncertainty in her face, the same feeling he had experienced when people looked at him like he was in the wrong place. Marcus quickly washed his hands and walked to the front of the restaurant. He pushed through the doors and approached the woman with a warm smile. "Excuse me," he said gently. "Are you here for a meeting with someone?" The relief on the woman's face was immediate. "Yes," she said, her voice shaky. "I am supposed to meet with Chef Bernard about a server position, but there seems to be some kind of misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding at all," Marcus said confidently. "You are in exactly the right place. I am Marcus, one of the chefs here. Chef Bernard is expecting you." He turned to Officer Johnson, who looked embarrassed as he recognized Marcus from 3 months earlier. "This is our interview candidate," Marcus said firmly. "Chef Bernard specifically asked me to watch for her and make sure she felt welcome." Officer Johnson nodded and walked away without saying anything, clearly remembering his mistake from Marcus's first day. As Marcus walked the young woman into the restaurant, he told her about his own experience. "The same thing happened to me when I first came here," he said. "People sometimes make quick judgments based on how someone looks, but Chef Bernard and the people who work here only care about your skills and your attitude." The woman's name was Keisha, and her interview went just as well as Marcus's had. She was smart, friendly, and had experience working in restaurants. Chef Bernard hired her on the spot, and she would start the following Monday. Marcus volunteered to help train her during her first week. That night, after the dinner service was over and the kitchen was clean, Marcus sat in the break room with some of the other cooks. They were talking about the evening service and planning for the next day's specials. Marcus still felt amazed sometimes that these talented people considered him their equal. "Hey, Marcus," said Pierre, the line cook who had been impressed with his interview dish. "Did you see the review in the food magazine that came out today? They mentioned your chicken dish again. They called it revolutionary." Marcus smiled but tried not to let the praise go to his head. Chef Bernard had taught him that good reviews were nice, but the real measure of a chef was consistency. Could you make great food every single night? Could you keep learning and improving? Could you work as part of a team even when you were tired and stressed? Sarah, the server who had helped him on his first day, came into the break room. "Marcus, there is a customer at table 12 who wants to meet the chef who created the Southern French chicken. She said it was the best thing she has ever eaten." Marcus felt proud but also a little nervous. He was still getting used to customers, wanting to meet him and compliment his cooking. 3 months ago, he was just a line cook in a small-town diner. Now people were asking to meet him because of his food. He walked out to table 12, where an elderly woman sat with her adult daughter. "I heard you wanted to meet me," Marcus said politely. "Oh yes," the woman said with excitement. "That chicken dish was absolutely wonderful. I have been eating at fancy restaurants for 40 years, and I have never tasted anything quite like it." "Where did you learn to cook like that?" Marcus told her about learning from his grandmother and studying cookbooks on his own. He explained how he had combined Southern cooking traditions with French techniques. The woman listened with genuine interest and asked thoughtful questions about his background and his cooking philosophy. "You have a real gift," she told him. "Do not ever let anyone tell you that you do not belong in the finest kitchens. Talent like yours is rare and precious." As Marcus walked back to the kitchen, he thought about how much his life had changed. 3 months ago, a stranger had given him $5 because she thought he was homeless. Tonight, a different stranger had praised his cooking and told him he belonged in the finest kitchens. The $5 bill was still in his wallet, but now it served a different purpose. Marcus had decided to keep it as a reminder of 2 important lessons. First, people often see what they expect to see rather than what is really there. Second, the best response to prejudice and doubt is excellence and perseverance. Marcus had also decided what he would do with that $5. When he got his first paycheck from La Belle Cuisine, he was going to add his own money to it and donate the total to a program that helped young people from poor families learn cooking skills. He wanted to help other people who had talent but not opportunity, just like he had been. As Marcus finished cleaning his station and prepared to go home to his new apartment, he looked around the kitchen one more time. This was his kitchen now. These were his colleagues. This was his career. The scared young man who had sat on a bench outside this restaurant was gone. In his place was a confident chef who had earned his success through hard work, talent, and determination. The next morning, Marcus would come back and do it all again. He would cook beautiful food, teach new employees like Keisha, and continue learning from Chef Bernard and the other experienced cooks. He would face each day knowing that he had proven himself and earned his place here. But most importantly, Marcus would remember to help other people who faced the same challenges he had overcome. Success was not just about achieving your own dreams. It was also about opening doors for the next person who needed a chance to show what they could do. The boy who had learned to cook in his grandmother's kitchen had become a man who could cook anywhere. And he was just getting started.